So now we're in assignment 2.2, 02.2. We're just dealing with basic HTML, and although we've already talked about basic HTML, we're just trying to get used to the syntax of the language. We're trying to figure out that we don't need to know everything about HTML. We can rely on code that already exists and use these design patterns to construct pages. At the same time, as I mentioned in a lecture before, if you're learning a foreign language like Spanish, French, or whatever language, you're going to be confronted with new words, new vocabulary, and we're just trying to get used to seeing these words over and over again. For this exercise, I recommend you use your CodePen page so that you can save your work as you go along. Even though we're using just a free account, it should be sufficient to keep a few pages or a few pens at least in the system that we can go back and use for reference. I'm going to click on my user menu and open up the dashboard, mainly because I want to make sure that I have a blank slate here. I haven't saved anything yet. Currently, if there were any files there, it would show me a grid of blocks. I'm going to change that to list so that I see it as I would a directory. And yes, I will take the offer and go make a new pen. As I do in other videos, I'm going to change my view on the screen so that the layout has the code on the left. We have not yet encountered CSS. We'll do that in the following lessons. So I'm going to click and drag the CSS and JavaScript windows down. And let's see what the lesson says to do. This is, like I said, basically a copy and paste type of thing. We're just going to create a very simple page. I have my GitHub open, as you saw, and I have, well, that's just Blackboard on the back. I also have Atom open because at one point I'm going to make sure that whatever I have locally on my computer matches what's up on GitHub. Let me close the welcome and etc. windows that are open just so that even things from previous assignments are closed and everything's out of the way. Right now, I see that we should be on week 2. I see that I have an index page. I don't necessarily need this index page just yet, especially since if I go to GitHub and I see what my week 2 assignments have, I don't even have a week 2 there. So I need to make sure that everything is synced. And mostly, I need that week 2 up there. If you already have a week 2 in both of them, great. If you have a week 2, especially on GitHub, I would recommend that you ask Atom to fetch. That way it will bring anything from the server to your local file. Since I have it in my local file, but I don't have it on my server, I might want to push this, since it's blank anyway. So I will click on index and save it, just to make sure that it knows that things are happening. I'll go ahead and put in a hello world in here, even though I'm going to change it. Otherwise, it doesn't know that things have changed. I'll click on save again. Now I can stage this change. I will double click to say, you know, yes, this has been staged, and I can add a commit message, and I'll say syncing files. And commit this to the server, and once it's committed, I'll push it. This should only take a few seconds. Okay, so the tip of your current line is behind its remote. So it knows, it acknowledges that everything's out of sync right now. So since I know for a fact that there's nothing on week 2 in the server, and there is this that I want to push in my local server, I will hold the command key. Since I'm on a Mac, if you're on a PC and get this message and you definitely want to force a push, press Control and then click to push. I'm holding my command key and telling it commit to master, or rather push 1. I will confirm that I want to force this up. I just want everything to be synced. if I check my GitHub and reload, my week 2 is now there and my mostly blank index file is there. So I'll go back to the lesson. Like I said, we're just going to be reading down. It's HTML basics. If you read the book, if you've been reading the book, if you read W3 Schools, to go over just the very basics of HTML, we're building a very basic page. I'm going to scroll down in advance since I've already talked about this. There's going to be a document that already has a pre-built web page that you can simply go and get. I can get the files from here. What does an HTML document look like? Well, it looks kind of like this, and I'm going to select all that, copy it, and bring it into my pen. My pen will probably give me an error, and that's going to be this right here. And that's because I'm declaring this document type as an HTML, which is fine. You should be doing that on a regular page anyway. But since CodePen is basically saying, hey, dude, we're working with HTML, why are you doing this again? I'll just ignore it for now, but just know that this is a soft error and that it will not stop the page from working, but it certainly will be needed once it goes to the GitHub server. So to review what's going on with this typical page, it declares this to be an HTML package. It says that HTML code will continue. Not only that, but it's going to be in US and American English. And its code starts here on line 2 and it goes all the way down to 11. On line 3 we have the head, which will have the meta, that's the information about the page, such as what character sets we're using. This page is in English, so it's using a Roman language, rather a Roman alphabet. UTF-8 is the designation for that character set. I have a title that says it's my web lesson 4. You can change this to something like week 2 if you want. You can put your name, you can put whatever it is here, just make sure that's got a title. Right now it's trying to link to a style sheet that's called style.css, and that's just because the template there just saying if you do have a style sheet, this is how you would link it. We're not using a style sheet just yet. We'll talk about that in the following lessons. And then we have the body, the important part. This is the web page. It's got this H1. We're going to be adding more code here by copying and pasting. For now, I'll just ignore this H1 and see what the lesson has to say. In HTML, basically, we're saying, well, if you want a paragraph will look like this. You start by opening up a P tag, open bracket P, close bracket P, whatever text you want your paragraph to say, and then it will close by the same code except it's preceded by a slash. I'll copy this and put it in my pen. HTML is read from top to bottom, so if you just paste the paragraph right after, it will give us a header, H1, the most important thing on the page, followed by a paragraph. If you want to write gobs and gobs of text, you can keep on adding paragraphs, and it will continue to show you the code. So if I want to say the same thing twice, or I want to start writing my own life story, this is the beginning of the story, for example. That's how you would do it. That's how you do a paragraph. In the lesson, also, you will learn that if you want to go to the next line, but not necessarily as a new paragraph, you can add a break line, and that is going to be bracket BR. Depending on where you get your information, it might just be a BR like that, which definitely works. If you're from the old school like I am, I still want to do the space slash. And it's still accepted, although less and less people use it. So I'll just stick with BR. And then I can say that this is the second line. Then the paragraph ends. If you notice, the spacing between the paragraphs is different than the spacing between the break. A line break just says, hey, start a new line, go to the next line, and keep on typing. So a paragraph, I hope that you're sort of familiar with how Word works and how the styling in Word works, Microsoft Word, that you can say what the spacing between each paragraph is. That's going to be the line height parameters we'll be changing later. We'll be able to add custom spacing in between lines as we go along. So fine, enough of paragraphs and H1s. We've done that before. Just a brief explanation of how we're working with the brackets, the opening tags and the closing tags. You'll hear me say angle brackets mostly during these lessons, but it's basically an opening tag and a closing tag. Everything in the body is what is the web page, and we can see that so far our web page doesn't have much information, but it's displaying over here on the right. Here is a quick note. Even though I said that we're going to be doing CSS later, we can always add attributes within the code. We want to be able to have a uniform place to keep our code for CSS. But there will be times when you want to just add a splash of color in one point. Maybe it's an emergency. You'll probably would want to go back into your CSS files and change it. But just for this example, I will copy the blue line that says that a simple paragraph of text is now presented by adding the style with the color blue. This is already our CSS code. Notice the semicolon. The use of semicolon in programming in HTML, like in many other languages, means this is the end of this statement. So if I wanted to add different things like the size and things like that, I could keep on adding parameters there. Next, this is the part that I skipped to and I got the code from. This is an explanation about doc type and why it's important, and then just the parts of the web page. You have, like I said, you start from top to bottom. There is going to be a head, there's a body, and later on we'll even have a footer. If you wanted to, not to confuse you too much since we're going to be talking about semantic elements soon, a footer element looks just like this. Right now this doesn't have any styling, but it definitely sets things apart. That says it could be something like copyright and the unfortunate 2020 year, and then my name. And I could put this inside of a paragraph. Apologies for going backwards on that, but there's a paragraph right there. Just like I added the styling here, I can do a quick styling, just sort of a side note. I'll copy this and try here in the footer to paste. Do I want it blue? Well, I don't know, but I can say that style is going to be text align center. Wait for it to change, and now my copyright is in the middle of the page. Just a quick example. Don't worry too much, but if you want to try it out, you want to try other styles as we go in the code, by all means. This is going to be a very boring page. If you want to change the content as you go along, I invite you to do so. These are just basics. So now, on to the next thing. I'm going to copy this whole glob of text from line 1 to 19. We've already dealt with headings and paragraphs before, but just to keep on adding content to this page, I will copy all of that. I don't want to mess up my footer and my header and all that, so I will find the last line that actually matters here is a simple paragraph of text in blue. And I'll add a couple of lines. All of these blank lines make no difference to the page design. It's only to make it easier for me to read, for you to read, and for whoever you're working on with this page to read. I will then drop in all of the text that I copied. And since I already have a header, it says that this is my web page, etc., I really only need one H1. We'll talk about why this is important when we talk about accessibility issues when designing web pages. You really only need to have one thing that's important, otherwise readers and electronic readers especially will get confused as to where to get started reading a page. So this H1 then on my website is all about food, and my line 15 could be an H2, just to drop it down a little bit, bring it down in importance. Then there's more just random text to follow, and like I said, change it to something else if you want. If you want to keep it just like it is, that's fine as well. Next, we have a brief introduction to lists. I keep on comparing things to Microsoft Word because I think that everybody has access to that software, and you can see that in Microsoft Word it's really simple to get a list going. Just know the difference between an ordered list and an unordered list. An unordered list has no order. It doesn't matter what order it is. Eggs are at the top, but they could be at the bottom. It doesn't matter, and you can make a change really quick. The code is introduced by a container of sorts by saying what follows is an unordered list, UL, and it finishes by closing that tag, /UL. This is the end of the unordered list. Anything else in between is composed of list items, the LI elements. And just to save time, I will get all that, copy, go back to my pen, find a good space for it, and I'll go back to the end of the document again. In my case, it's right after the gorgonzola, the blue cheese as it were, and paste it there. I press Command V, Control V on a PC to paste, and now I have a list. I can also say, hey, gorgonzola is, and I want to sort of make it stand out a little bit. I could put an emphasis by adding the EM code and closing it right after the word gorgonzola /EM. And now it's closed. I could copy and paste the same code if I wanted to create a bulleted list, an ordered list, but I'll just go back to the lesson and see what awaits us. Ordered lists are lists where the order of items does matter. What this means is that this is going to be a numbered list. So if you want to start from number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, make sure that you already select the order of the list as you type it. I'll copy this and bring it into the document, paste it after the unordered list, and now I have a new ordered list. OL opens, and then a numbered list begins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, it would make sense that preheat the oven is at the very top, bake for 25 minutes is at the end. But what if the recipe were different or things changed? Maybe you had to add the vanilla mix and then the flour and mix well before you add the butter and sugar. So if I copy and paste this, or rather cut and paste these elements, you have to keep in mind of where they were, where you want them to be, so that the numbers continue to make sense. So I'll do that. This at the vanilla line, if I cut it, Command X, and go to where the other one is and paste it, then the order is still from 1 to 5, but the instructions have changed. I also might want to add, this one says gorgonzola, and I think we decided that maybe this was a recipe for donuts. So I want to add another header to keep the elements separate and make it a little bit easier to read. So I'll just add a header to, let's say, donut recipe. I'll close the H2 and continue on to the lesson. Emphasis, I just did an emphasis, but we can also embolden words by adding the strong element. So I want to say cheese. Let's start with cheese, and cheese is important to the person writing this. So I will find the word cheese, and in the old days you would add just a simple B, and in some instances this might still work, especially when the browser, it doesn't care what version of HTML you're using. In this instance, it doesn't really care much since it's giving me this error, but I will add the strong here. Notice how, since the line is, or rather the command is not closed, it just keeps on going. Everything else will be bold. So make sure that you close your tags in the right place. I will close strong there at the end of the word cheese, and now only cheese is strong. That's some strong cheese right there. Keep on going down, and although this is going to be very important, block versus inline elements, read what this says so that you can start to get an idea of what's going on with inline and block elements. We'll be talking about this in future lessons. In the meantime, just know that this is happening. For this assignment, yes, I've been doing everything in CodePen. So what needs to happen is this. I need you to save your document so that it's there. I need you to have this in the instructions. I want this to be called HTML part 1, and I can go to the pencil next to Untitled and either type it or copy and paste it, HTML part 1. I'll make sure that this is saved just by clicking. It's already on autosave, and I can go then to my user profile and look at my dashboard. I'm already looking at it as a list, so I know that when I click here, it will take me directly and to this little project. This very unique URL will always take me to this page with my content as it stands right now. I'm going to right-click on that and copy it. And following the somewhat bad directions here, I'll rewrite them so they make a little bit more sense. Inside of the week 2 folder, we want to create a file called coding101.html. So I can do that either with Atom or on GitHub. I'll go to Atom, which still has some weird error there, but here my index file is already created. It just says hello world. I'm going to get the content of all this, Command A, and then copy it and paste it inside of the index page in week 2. I'm selected all the page there, all the text there as well, so that whenever I paste, everything else is taken out. This now has the doc type HTML, which becomes more important in this type of HTML page. I will then it's already got a name. It's called index.html. I'm going to rename this file, right click on it and tell it to rename, and I can call this what I said in the lesson, which is coding101.html. .html and save. So now it's telling me that it's going to get rid of index.html. It's turning into red, but it's going to add coding101.html, which I guess it would help if I spelled it correctly. I will go back and rename it. So it will forgive me for my misspelling by telling me that it's going to name it, after all, Coding 101, and still getting rid of the old index page. For all of this to happen, I need to stage it, so I can double click the changes, including the deletion, so I should have staged all, and then I will add a commit message. New version of Coding 101. I have a real problem with the word coding. I will commit this file and then push it. As it's pushing, I know that in my GitHub then, I can hope that the files will show up here inside of week 2. I have my new version of Coding 101 there. And the file Coding 101 now appears. So important thing to know is that now if I go to this page, the one inside of week 2, the file or any file will not load automatically. I will get a 404 error that says there's nothing here to show. But I know that the so Coding 101.html, press enter. It's showing me an old version. Let me reload, and here is my web page with all the silly text that's in there. One thing that's missing also, and it's missing mostly because it's not part of what we've talked about yet, I'll put this link in the assignment so that you can find it at the bottom. But any questions that I have about HTML, I go and ask W3 Schools. So I'll say w3schools.com link because I want to add a hyperlink. Hyperlink works really simple. It's just an A tag, it's an anchor, and that has a URL and then any text you want it to say. I'll copy this and bring it. I can go either to Atom or to my GitHub. I'll go to GitHub, go inside of my Coding 101. And I know I'm jumping around all over the place just to sort of get an idea of how you need to keep track of where the files are and what's published, what's not. I'll click on the pencil to add a link. Since it doesn't make any sense, you can put it at the bottom, you can put it at the top, pick a place. I'll put it, I guess I could put it right below my H1 at the very top. This H2 is my website, it's all about food, and then I have this blue line. I'll put it right below the blue line. I'll paste what I just copied, and that is just the standard text for a link. I want this link to say, I have a working copy of this page on CodePen. In my CodePen, this unique URL that I was talking about, I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it where the URL should go. It's inside those quotes. So I have an anchor that's referencing to this website, https:// etc. And then it's going to say I have a working copy of this page on CodePen. I'm outside of Atom, I'm in GitHub, so I will still commit the changes. I am updating coding101.html, and you can accept that and tell it to just commit the changes. Once the pages are committed, I can go back to the page and reload it. And even though I did it in GitHub, I still have to wait for it. It's taken a while. But now there it is. I have a working copy of this page on CodePen. I will click on it and CodePen will appear with my code. I should have also put in a paragraph marker around that. I'll do that really quick and save it just to show you what I'm talking about. Is that the link is just sort of there floating on line 15. I should have actually said open paragraph, close paragraph, and then actually save this one, in this case committed. So that is this. This will reload eventually. The page will still look basically the same, even though I added that paragraph. I do need you to turn in the link to the page inside your GitHub. So it's going to be whatever your GitHub page is, .io, week 2 /coding101. Make sure that this is the URL that you turn in so that when I open it, I see the code that you've done so far, and then I'll be able to click on the CodePen link and see your work on CodePen. I'll see you in the next video.